Caller, 36 man.
It was a day that stopped America in its tracks. One of the most significant men of the 20th century, struck down by a single bullet through his jaw that killed him almost instantly.
We had been invited over to a local minister's house for a soul food dinner.
You were just leaving for dinner?
Just leaving for dinner. And he usually walk out the door. He's usually dressed and he usually go, because he's usually always in a hurry. But he walked out there and held over, and the fellow who's been driving us around since in Memphis told him, Doc, you better get your coat. He said, okay, and he stood up there a minute or two, and I guess just a thing of destiny, I guess, making, he just was a target there for a minute or two.
And I asked him, was he ready to go, because he had sent for me to go to dinner. And I told him I was ready to go, and I was about to make another statement. I said, Dr. King. Just as I said, Dr. King, he straightened up. And when he straightened up, the bullet lifted him off of the ground. And of course, and as it took off a part of his jaw, he bled profusely before the ambulance came, and there were police all around. They came charging toward us, asking us what happened, from which direction did the shot come. We could say over our heads, because you did not hear a shot, you just saw the explosion in his face.
The assassination took place in this city of Memphis, Tennessee, where Dr. King was involved in supporting a strike by the sanitation workers of that city, most of whom are black, who are in quest of decent wages.
We're getting ready to demand jobs and income. We're tired of working full-time jobs for part-time income. All right. We're tired of living in run-down, dilapidated, rat-infested shacks and slums. We are tired of our children having to attend overcrowded, inferior schools. Make it plain. And we are tired of our men not being able to be men because they can't find work.
There had been a series of marches and demonstrations, the last of which erupted in violence. Disappointed Dr. King left Memphis to meet another commitment, but he vowed that he would return to lead a peaceful demonstration march. He boarded a plane in Atlanta to return back to Memphis.
On the 3rd, the day before his assassination, as normal, I was one of the ones always chosen to be his personal security. And I was ordered to proceed the same way as in the past.
All right. Who were you working for? Were you privately employed? Were you working
for the Memphis Police Department.
Okay.
And we proceeded to the airport and awaited his arrival. And once he arrived with his body and other persons who met him there, we asked or told him that we were there for security, to give him the same security. I wished I knew now who in his party said we don't want security. Well, mind you now, this wasn't the first time that the party had said we don't want no security. I said, well, I'm here to make sure he gets to Lorraine Motel, and that's where I will see if he get to. And we'll talk about the other later. So we proceeded to escort him to Lorraine Motel. And once arriving there, we were met by other plainclothes detective from the Memphis Police Department and my inspector, who was in charge of the security. And he asked the party for the opportunity to offer security for Dr. King. Again, he was denied the right to give that security. We proceeded. He asked then for his men and us to move behind the wall. There's a wall bordering on Mulberry Street, that's from the Lorraine Hotel. So we proceeded behind the wall, and he called back headquarters and was instructed to move. Forget it, just move out there. And upon that, I asked him, could I stay in the area and find a location where I could still offer security? Mind you, this inspector had before offered security, not only for Dr. King, but for the president, the vice president, whatever. So he understood security. He said, okay, Joe, do what you want to do. We looked around and found this fire station that had a back door and a window that you could see very vividly with the naked eye, the room of Dr. King and everything within that spectrum. And we set up over there. Once we had set up this post, then I thought it was more wise then to not only contact my inspector, but to report it to the intelligence, which I did. And later on, I think either I or someone brought us binoculars so we could see cars that we couldn't visualize the numbers. And we kept note of person going and coming. And the afternoon went on, and it was time for the speech, his last farewell speech, as we can call it now. And it began to rain, and it rained.
Some began to talk about the threats that were out. What would happen to me from some of our sick white brothers? Well, I don't know what will happen now, but it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over. And I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Well, I wasn't actually supposed to return there the next morning, but I did. Richmond and I both returned back that morning and stayed all the morning until the approximate 2 or 3 hours prior to his assassination.
What precisely was your contingency plan in the event that Dr. King had been killed when you were in the fire station across the street? What was your plan?
Well, the plan was that Richmond would remain at the rear, looking out the window to observe anybody moving. And mine was to go to the front of the building and go north. And the reason I said north from the fire station is because there is no action south, and there is no tall building south of that would be in that location. It would have to be north of. So if anyone who had fired a shot from that location would have to be on Main Street on the north of the fire station. My second reason is I was more familiar with not only the militant groups, both black and white, but law enforcement officers as well. And I felt my recognition of whoever may have been would be more possible than it would have Richmond.
What was your reputation as you view it now? Was Richmond more loyal to the police department than you, or did they suspect you were too sympathetic to Dr. King and the sanitation workers in Memphis?
Well, there were several memos that had been written to the intelligence that I had been encouraging the sanitation workers to stay out. So, and they knew my feelings about Dr. King already. So, I don't know, you add 2 and 2 makes 4 or whatever.
Let me ask you this. Why did you make elaborate plans to trap the assailant should the assassination occur? Why did you seemingly, from this vantage point now, it seems that you put more emphasis on catching the perpetrator after the deed rather than preventing the deed?
Well, again, the possibilities of prevention was out. We've been ordered not to go in the vicinity of or close to Dr. King at that point. So the only thing you do then is, what can I do in order to apprehend the person in case it does happen? I think any good security officer set up plans in order to apprehend any person who may have committed such an act. And that was my only concern at that point. Since I could not be by his side as I had been in the past, then if anything occurred, then at least could be the one who apprehended or try to apprehend.
You were a Memphis police assigned to, at that point, provide surveillance for Dr. King and his party.
Right.
Prior to that time, you had been providing security, which is to say that you had been very close to him.
Right.
You could prevent an attack upon him.
Right.
Now, when you were in the fire station, clearly 100 yards away, you were just essentially spying on him. That was your mission with the police department. Now, what, on the day of April 4th, when Dr. King was assassinated, from the afternoon on, what took place and what was the circumstance and the specifics of your recall from that assignment?
Well, I remember getting a call from some woman stating that we're going to kill you.
This woman had also threatened you at the airport.
Yeah, at the airport also.
The day before.
Right.
Now, did you know her before?
Yes. She's a barber by profession. So I laugh it off, as I always do most this type of thing. Being a police officer, you're going to get those all the time. So I laughed it off. The only thing that went in my mind, how did she know I was at the fire station? To call the number down there. And I guess it was an hour later that Lieutenant Arkin came down and said, they want you at headquarters. I said, for what? I don't know. I said, well, I can't leave the post here. He said, well, they want you and you got to go. You don't know what it is? No. So we proceed to headquarters, and from in headquarters, in the conference room, was the Director Holloman.
That's Frank Holloman.
Frank Holloman.
Who was the safety director of Memphis.
Yeah, safety director of Memphis for fire and police department. Along with the chief of police, J.C. McDonald. And the rest of them I don't know by name, but most of them were brass from the sheriff department, highway patrol, the Army intelligence, the FBI, and
how many were there?
There was 12 or 15 people in the conference room.
Okay.
And upon entering, he said, Reddit call you up here because we made arrangements.
This is Holloman?
Holloman. At a Holiday Inn for you and your family. I said, for what? Well, this man standing here is a Secret Service man. He just flew in here and stated there's been a contract let on your life. And I want to make sure that you are secure. So we've arranged all this for you. And I said, I'm not about to go to no Holiday Inn. I have a sick mother-in-law, number one. Number two, if you're concerned about the safety of my family, you take care of them. Let me go back on the street. If there is a contract, there's no one can deal with the contract by putting him in a hotel or anywhere else. And I don't want my house blown up with me in it. And with our words back and forth, he said, it is an order. You will go home.
When there were complaints from somebody, did we reduce manpower at the Lorraine? Did we reduce manpower in the area?
No, did not.
And Lieutenant Arkin said, okay, take you home.
Now, this Secret Service agent that they told you had flown down from Washington, did he speak to you at all? If so, what did he say?
He didn't say anything.
He didn't say anything?
He just stood there, and I walked in the door, like coming in that door there. He would have been to my right, to the right of me walking in the door. He was a good 6 feet. You know, he's taller than I am. I'm 5'9", but he was good, much more, about 6. Broad shoulder, weighing about 180 or 90 pounds, light-colored hair, with a sport coat, blue mixed-colored, what kind of trousers, I don't know whether it was gray or blue or whatever. That's all I can remember about him.
You don't remember his name?
No, he didn't. No.
No name was given.
This is a Secret Service man here that flew in from Washington, stated that there was a contract let on your life.
Did they say at that meeting where the contract had come from?
It's possible. It's possible it could have been said. I don't know whether it was said then or I found out later about the contract come out of Mississippi. Now, I did find out later it was come out of Mississippi, but the contract was let out of St. Louis.
Right. Okay, now, so you left the police headquarters, and then what did you do?
What you mean?
After he gave you your order, you went down in the squad car and you went home.
Went home and we parked out in front of my house, and the purpose of parked out in front of my house was waiting on security for me. But after this happened, we went inside.
You were in the squad car when you actually heard the announcement on the radio.
In the cruiser. Well, it was a cruiser, a detective's cruiser.
Okay, now you had two bodyguards essentially with you, two police?
Yeah, after this happened, two officers arrived, two detectives arrived.
Right. How long did they stay with you? Were they with you around the clock?
Around the clock until Sunday night.
Until Sunday night. Yeah, so Sunday night would have been, well, he was killed on the 3rd, so that would have been the 7th.
Right.
Okay. Security, and I don't mean surveillance now, I mean security, close-in security that had been provided for Dr. King before had been essentially stripped away in 3 particular elements. One is that the Memphis Police Department, in addition to you in Richmond, had a 4-man team that was assigned to Dr. King. That was removed on the 3rd of April, the day before he was killed. You and Richmond had been security close to him. You were removed as security and placed essentially on spy and surveillance. There was also a group called the Invaders that had a security force. That group was removed 15 minutes before he was killed. Now, could you tell us a little bit about what you know about the Invaders?
The Invaders were the young group out of South Memphis, what we call Trigg, Florida. Quite a brilliant young group. Many of them had, one or two had master's degree and college degrees, and some were high school students, but all seemed to have been brilliant young men. And I think their whole beginning was that they had been denied the various opportunities. And I think when Dr. King started coming to Memphis, they got involved in this. And I think Dr. King became involved with them to the point is to talk to them about violence, not to participate in violence, and that he was a man of peace. On that particular day, on the 4th, I still haven't found out why they left. They left before I was pulled out. And they left out in...
They left the Lorraine Hotel.
Lorraine Hotel before I was pulled out from that site. And they left at a very rapid pace. With their clothes in their hand, some was putting their shirts on. And
how many? Half dozen?
Well, good to 6, 7 more.
Good half dozen.
And the car sped off, and some were still trying to get in the car, the door open. This has stuck in the back of my mind. Why? What caused those young men to leave a second floor, the same floor that King was on, in such a haste? And I think it meant more, the question came more pronounced after his assassination. Why did they leave so abruptly? And to this point, I don't. I've had thoughts in my mind, did they get some kind of warning to get out of there?
But didn't you ever ask any of them?
Well, I never got an answer. Never got an answer. Because even after the things that cooled down, I went to bat for most of them, got them out of jail, got them jobs and this type of thing, and none that I dealt with gave any reason why they left.
Well, wait a minute. Now, you're a trained law enforcement officer, and you had their respect and confidence. And you mean to tell me that on something this important as the murder of this man who you hold in such high esteem, we all do, that you couldn't get an answer from them?
They said they had no answer for it. And naturally, when you're trying to help young people like that with a brain, you don't push them to the brink to run them away from you. You try to do the best you can at that particular point. There's one still come around me, but he wasn't in that particular group at that particular time. He said, I don't know why they left. I've asked him those same questions.
Yeah, just one thing on that, and you know that you and I have been working on this together.
Right.
In fact, you've been very helpful in the investigation I've been doing on it. And there was a group, there was a 4-man security force of the Invaders that was providing protection for Dr. King. The major group, the main group, the 6 or 7 that you were describing, left around 3:30.
Right.
Okay, there was another group, a security force, that was providing security for Dr. King that did not leave until roughly 15 minutes before he was killed. Their position is that they were relieved now by someone on Dr. King's staff. Not on his staff, but someone in his party, in that area, by one of the reverends who was there. They said that they were told that their services as security people were no longer needed, and that that they were essentially dismissed, and the 4 of them left. Now, one of the 4 was a undercover Memphis police person that you know about. Perhaps you could tell us about the penetration of the Invaders by the Memphis police as well as some of the FBI. Were you aware of that?
Right. Well, I use the term police, but I wonder. Was he ever a policeman in the first place? I think we got wind of this. One of the guys asked me about it. I said, well, just watch him and see.
The Invaders asked you about it.
Right. And I said, watch and see. I said, I think every group at this point has somebody in it. That's my feeling. And I think they finally caught him. I think it was after Dr. King was killed. They caught him. And to my knowledge, he came back supposedly working for the police department for a short time. And then I discovered he was supposed to work for the FBI. And I believe that you uncovered that he wasn't with the FBI, he's with the CIA. This really disturbs me.
But the point is that he is, by the way, the first person who got to Dr. King after he was killed. He's the first person. He is a person that in the FBI files, these documents were released under the Freedom of Information. This particular agent who was undercover was one of the first people to get to Dr. King, and he is the one who they used to establish the fact that the bullet came from the rooming house, the flop house. Almost everyone else say that the bullet came from the bushes, and he was the first one up there. In fact, there was a photograph of him kneeling over Dr. King, as soon as he was hit. And when it happened, he supposedly was down in the parking lot, but as soon as he was hit, he was up, and there's a picture of him leaning over him. Now, did you ever meet this man? This
yeah, I've seen him.
You've seen him.
Yeah.
Now, what is your opinion at this point of his role, or have you put it together?
I don't know behind you just saying that. I didn't know all that. That's
okay. Well, let me ask you this: an area of your personal involvement. Now, Dr. King was killed in 1968. People had investigated it, not just the FBI, but some journalists, etc., have been reporting it. Now, some of this is just now coming out, and some of the things that you are telling us here today, and I guess our viewers should know that that Mr. Reddick has been interviewed by the Justice Department last year, that you're central to their OPR report, that you were one of the major witnesses for the House Committee on the Assassination. In fact, my source is that you're either one or two, or either the first or the second witness to be called before the House Committee on Dr. King. Obviously, you've been under a lot of pressure now. The point I'm asking is why, after all of these years, what have you been living with after, since 1968? Finally you began to put this together in your head. It was a puzzle to you up until just recently, or?
Well, it wasn't. I just felt there wasn't no point in doing anything at that point, and that who do you go to, who do you talk to, who do you get things started on or with? So you try not to think about it anymore. You try to put it out of your mind. But I think that the involvement of bringing it back up started me to re-evaluating and beginning to start to put the puzzles together. I sometimes feel I have the puzzle put together. And like the information you just gave me there, it gives me another plug to put in my puzzle. So I think information as you gave me then would lend then for me to complete that puzzle.
Why, just backing up a step, why do you feel you were pulled away from your assignment of surveillance that day? Why do you think they pulled you away?
I think because whoever pulled the trigger, I could identify.
Do you believe that James Earl Ray, acting alone, killed Dr. Martin Luther King and escaped that day on his own?
I don't believe James Earl Ray pulled the trigger.
You don't believe he pulled the trigger?
Do you think the shot came from the flop house?
No.
Where do you feel the shot came from?
Came from the hill below the window of the flop house.
Why do you think that?
I think that some way they could substantiate the upward motion or the motion of where the bullet actually penetrated. The man's jaw was broken. Sure, it could come downward, but normally a bullet with hitting the large bone in the back of the throat would come upward.
The bullet lifted him off of the ground, and of course, and as it took off a part of his jaw, he bled profusely.
Which means then it was levered then from the ledge rather than the window, which was a two-story on a hill.
When I came out of this room down here, immediately after I heard the blast, several policemen came out of this door over here. And I wondered what some of them had shot Dr. King, and at least I figured the man who shot him had to be in those bushes over there.
At least a half dozen other witnesses also say that the shot came from the bushes below the flop house, not from the flop house. Moreover, the FBI cannot prove that the shot came from the flop house second-floor window that you see here, nor can they connect the bullet that struck Dr. King to the weapon they say fired it. Reporter Les Payne has copies of FBI records to back up what we just said. If James Earl Ray pulled the trigger, it appears that he did it from those bushes. But regardless, the assassin had an awful lot of people working in support of the deed. Let's take a look again at what we've just seen and heard. 1. On the 3rd of April, the day before the assassination, a 4-man Memphis Police Department security detail was removed from Dr. King without explanation, without replacement. 2. That same day, Officer Reddit and his partner, who were originally assigned by the Memphis Police Department as additional personal security for Dr. King, were removed from the assignment and told to surveil Dr. King from a distance no closer than 100 yards. 3. Then, Reddit is removed from that post, and he's told that because of a threat on Reddit's life, he had to stay home under police guard. 4. On the 4th of April, all but 4 of a group of some 12 men called the Invaders, who had also been guarding Dr. King from an adjoining room in the Lorraine Motel, left in haste just an hour and a half before the assassination. The remaining 4 Invaders also left 15 minutes before the fatal shot was fired. There is no explanation to this day as to why. Finally, there's the Memphis Police Safety Director, Holloman, who you heard tell a press conference that he had not removed any police personnel from Dr. King's security detail. Let's hear it again.
When there were complaints from somebody, did we reduce manpower at the Lorraine? Did we reduce manpower in the area?
No.
Why do you feel you were pulled away from your assignment of surveillance that day? Why do you think they pulled you away?
I think because whoever pulled the trigger, I could identify.
The King assassination has been reopened and is now before a congressional committee. Let's hope the following questions can be answered. Who pulled the trigger? From where? Who hired the assassin? And why? And who was responsible for the meticulous dismantling of Dr. King's security just before the assassination? And why did the FBI, the Secret Service, and the Memphis Police Department cooperate? Like It Is joins the millions of people who mourn Dr. King's assassination. And we await the truth about what happened, and then justice.